Hey, good morning. So this morning we'll be discussing about adrenal gland. So in my lecture, I have two parts. The first one will tackle about physiology of adrenal gland, and the second part will be the abnormalities. Okay. So as you can see, we have two adrenal glands, each of which lie at the superior pole of the two kidneys, and each weighs around 4 to 5 grams at birth. Flash before you is the cat section of the adrenal gland. As you can see here, it is composed of two distinct parts, which is the adrenal cortex and the adrenal medulla. The adrenal medulla is the one responsible in the secretion of catecholamines, which is your epinephrine and norepinephrine, and this is functionally related to the sympathetic nervous system. The outermost layer is what we call the adrenal cortex. These constitute approximately 80% of the gland and secretes different group of hormones, which is what we call the corticosteroids. Under the corticosteroids, we have the glucocorticoids and the mineralocorticoids. The glucocorticoid is best exemplified by cortisol, while mineralocorticoid is best exemplified by aldosterone. By the name itself, glucocorticoids is the one responsible in the regulation of glucose, while mineralocorticoid is responsible with the regulation of minerals, the electrolytes, such as sodium and potassium. Flash before you is the distinct three layers of the adrenal cortex. We have here the zona glomerulosa, zona fasciculata, and the zona reticularis. The zona glomerulosa is actually the main site of aldosterone synthesis. The aldosterone, as I've mentioned a while ago, is the principal mineralocorticoid of the human adrenal cortex. The second layer, which is found at the middle and has the widest portion, is responsible with the secretion and synthesis of cortisol and a little amount of androgen. The zona reticularis, lastly, mainly secretes androgen and a minute amount of cortisol. So flash before you is the adrenal steroidogenesis. So do not be overwhelmed by this slide. What I just want to emphasize here is that these hormones, your adrenal hormones such as aldosterone, cortisol, and the other hormones such as your estrogen and testosterone, all came from one parent compound, which is your cholesterol. 80% of the cholesterol that is used for steroidogenesis came from LDL. Your LDL will go inside the cytoplasm, and with the help of this regulatory protein or transport protein, which is what we call the STAR or the steroidogenic acute regulatory protein, the cholesterol from the cytoplasm will go inside the mitochondria. And inside the mitochondria, we have here what we call the rate-limiting enzyme called cholesterol desmolase. The cholesterol desmolase is the one that converts your cholesterol to pregnenolone. Your cholesterol desmolase is actually encoded by a gene, what we call CYP11A1. This is the gene that encodes the rate-limiting enzyme, which is what we call the cholesterol desmolase. This step is very important. The conversion of cholesterol to pregnenolone is the rate-limiting step. Why? What do you mean by the rate-limiting step? What is the importance of that? Anybody from the class? Bakit importante ang rate limiting step? Or why is it important that we have this rate limiting enzyme which converts cholesterol to pregnenolone? Anybody? So the rate limiting step, okay, nagbe-breakfast pa yata kayo mga anak. The rate limiting step is the first step that should occur or should be initiated for you to develop further yung mga succeeding hormones. Without this, no other hormones will proceed, okay? Such as your aldosterone, cortisol. Next. So as you can see here, this is the first step, the conversion of cholesterol to pregnenolone. From here, different hormones will be derived. So again, it is very important that you have your cholesterol desmolase to initiate this activity. Flash before you is the adrenal steroids and the synthetic steroids. So look at this. And under the adrenal steroids, you have the cortisol, corticosterone, and aldosterone. The cortisol has both mineralocorticoid activity and glucocorticoid activity, while corticosterone mainly has mineralocorticoid activity and a little amount of glucocorticoid activity. Likewise with aldosterone, it has a distinct mineralocorticoid activity among them all. If we want to compare the naturally occurring adrenal hormones with the synthetic steroids, if you will look at these synthetic steroids, all of them has a very distinct glucocorticoid activity, eliminating almost to none the mineralocorticoid activity. So the adrenocortical hormones are actually bounded to different types of plasma proteins. The binding to proteins serves as a reservoir to lessen the rapid fluctuation in free hormone concentration. So look at cortisol. 90 to 95% of the plasma cortisol is bound to cortisol binding globulin, or also known as transcortin, which represents the metabolically inactive pool and serves as a reservoir of free hormone. Since many of the cortisol are bounded, the half-life of which are longer. The half-life of cortisol is 60 to 90 minutes. In comparison to aldosterone, 60% of aldosterone are bounded to albumin, the half-life of which is shorter, which is only 20 minutes. With regards to the excretion of the adrenocortical hormones, the hormones are degraded mainly in the liver by conjugation with glucuronic acid and sulfate. 25% of these conjugates are excreted in the bile and in the feces, while the remaining 75%, the conjugates are highly soluble in the kidneys or in the plasma, and they are therefore readily filtered in the kidneys, and they are excreted in the urine. So if I'm gonna ask you, what is the main excretion of your adrenocortical hormones? Is it in the feces or in the urine?
Urine po, Dok.
Urine po.
Urine, okay. So let's discuss now first the glucocorticoids. Under the glucocorticoids, we have the following. 95% of glucocorticoid activity of the adrenocortical secretions resulted from the secretion of cortisol. This is also known as hydrocortisone. In addition to this, a small but significant amount of glucocorticoid activity is actually provided by the corticosterone, With regards to the regulation of cortisol secretion by ACTH, in the same way that other pituitary hormones like your thyroid stimulating hormone, your growth hormone, they're all controlled by a releasing factor which comes from the hypothalamus. This is an important releasing factor which also controls the ACTH secretion. So as you can see here, when we are talking about cortisol, the hypothalamus also has a releasing factor. This is called the corticotropin releasing factor. The anterior pituitary gland can only secrete minute amounts of ACTH in the absence of corticotropin releasing factor. So this hypothalamus will synthesize and secrete corticotropin releasing factor that will stimulate your anterior pituitary gland to release corticotropin. The adenocorticotropic hormone will be the one responsible in stimulating your adrenal cortex to secrete cortisol. The adenocorticotropic hormone activates the adenylyl cyclase, which is found in the cell membrane, which then stimulate the second messenger, which is what we call the cyclic AMP, that is found in the cytoplasm. The cyclic AMP will activate the rate-limiting enzyme, which is what we call the cholesterol desmolase, and this will initiate the initial step of the adrenocortical hormones production intracellularly by converting cholesterol to pregnenolone. Look at this slide. I guess almost every one of you are familiar that cortisol is also known as the stress hormone. Any form of stress can actually excite the hypothalamus or the ACTH production. Once you are exposed to stress, the hypothalamus will secrete corticotropin releasing factor that will stimulate your anterior pituitary gland to produce ACTH. Again, the adenocorticotropic hormone or corticotropin is very important in the regulation of the secretion of your cortisol. Cortisol, as I've mentioned, is a stress hormone, no? If you will notice, whenever you are exposed to stress, you need a lot more of energy to combat the stress. So cortisol is actually involved in gluconeogenesis. It has something to do with protein metabolism and fat mobilization. Aside from these three, it also has an effect on the anti-inflammatory effect as well as to other trauma. So we will discuss it one by one. But before that, what I want to emphasize is that there is something special with the cortisol, ACTH, and the corticotropin releasing factor. And what is that? These hormones actually follow the circadian rhythm or the diurnal rhythm. Doc, what do you mean by that? If you look at this, the secretory rates of your cortisol, ACTH, as well as your corticotropin releasing factor are high early in the morning but low late in the evening. This effect results from a 24-hour cyclical alteration in the signals from the hypothalamus. So what part of the hypothalamus regulates the circadian rhythm? It is actually found in the supraoptic nucleus. So what I want to emphasize is that when a person changes daily their sleeping habits, the cycle changes correspondingly. Why? Look at this graph. This is only applicable in patients who have normal sleeping pattern. Pag sinabi nating normal, gising sa umaga, they have workload, they have work during morning, and they rest at night or they sleep at night. So remember that your cortisol is the stress hormone. You need glucose, you need ATP to combat stressful conditions. So before the patient goes to work, early in the morning, cortisol is elevated. Of course, at night, when the patient is at rest, we expect that the cortisol level is also low. So what I want to emphasize here is that when you measure the blood cortisol level, they're only meaningful when expressed in terms of the time in the cycle at which the measurements are made. Example, if the blood was extracted early in the morning, we could expect that the cortisol level could normally be high. But of course, check also the level. Kapag more than 10 times elevated naman siya, baka naman po hindi na normal yon. It could be pathologic or abnormal. But if the cortisol level is somewhat slightly elevated, this is expected to be normal if the blood was extracted early in the morning. Okay. Halimbawa, if the patient has a different sleeping pattern, tatrabaho siya, call center agent, on graveyard shift. Okay? So patients who are on graveyard shift are awake at the evening and they are asleep in the day. Okay? So patients who are on graveyard shift, we expect that the cortisol level could be normally elevated in the evening and low in the morning. So when you interpret the laboratory result or the cortisol level, you need to check what time was the blood extracted and what is the sleeping pattern of the patient for you to interpret the result. So let's discuss the functions of glucocorticoids. Do you have any questions so far?
None po, Dok.
Okay, thank you. So let's discuss the functions of glucocorticoids as to its effects on the following: carbohydrate metabolism, protein and fat metabolism, and lastly, resistance to stress and inflammation. So let's discuss first the carbohydrate metabolism. So by far, the effect of cortisol is best known metabolic effect on the metabolism of carbohydrates. It has the ability to stimulate gluconeogenesis. And what do you mean by gluconeogenesis? By the name itself, gluco, neo, and genesis. Review lang to, anak ng biochem, definition of terms. What do you mean by gluconeogenesis?
This is of glucose po from non-carbohydrate sources.
Okay, it is a production or synthesis of glucose from non-carbohydrate products. Like what? Anong example ng non-carbohydrate?
Amino acid po.
Okay, proteins or amino acids. So the cortisol will stimulate the production of glucose or the synthesis of glucose from amino acid. Cortisol increases the enzyme that's required to convert the amino acid into glucose, which is found on the liver cell. So cortisol causes mobilization of amino acid from the extrahepatic tissue. What type of extrahepatic tissue? Mainly from the skeletal muscles. So these enzymes found in the skeletal muscles will break down the protein, and the amino acids will be brought to the liver to be converted into glucose. Next, cortisol decreases utilization of glucose by cells. By decreasing the oxidation of NADH to NAD, so somewhere between the point of entry of glucose into the cell and its final degradation, cortisol directly delays the rate of glucose utilization. NADH should be oxidized to allow glycolysis. However, this effect could account for the diminished utilization of glucose by the cell. So the effect of cortisol: decreased oxidation of NADH to NAD, decreased utilization of glucose by the cell. Let's discuss adrenal diabetes. Okay. At first, when the patient has low glucose uptake, our body will try to compensate it by the production or synthesis of glucose from non-carbohydrate products, which is in a form of gluconeogenesis. With this activity, glucose is expected to be elevated in the blood plasma. Insulin will be secreted because insulin is needed for the facilitation of glucose uptake, glucose going inside the skeletal muscles and adipose tissue. And with this action, the blood glucose level will return to its normal level. Okay? However, patients with persistent or chronically elevated cortisol level, the cortisol decreases utilization of glucose uptake by the cell, and this will cause persistently elevated blood glucose level. And this is what we call adrenal diabetes. So if I'm gonna ask you, what is now the difference of adrenal diabetes from diabetes mellitus? Can you still recall your diabetes mellitus?
Doc, pag diabetes mellitus po, it lacks insulin and a abnormal insulin receptor, while your adrenal diabetes po is an excessive cortisol level.
Okay, very good. In diabetes mellitus, you actually have two types, right? If you could still remember. In type 1, you lack insulin production, while in type 2, you have a problem in the receptors or you have insulin resistance. So both of which, since you need insulin for you to utilize glucose or for the glucose uptake of the cell, this will cause an increase in blood glucose level. If you want to compare it with adrenal diabetes, in adrenal diabetes, the problem here is not the insulin, it is the cortisol. The cortisol inhibits or reduces the sensitivity of many tissues, especially the skeletal muscles and adipose tissue, to the stimulatory effect of insulin. So, nire-reduce niya yung sensitivity to the insulin. So, high level of cortisol also can cause elevated blood glucose level. So, what I want to emphasize here is that when you encounter patients with high blood glucose level, it doesn't necessarily mean they have a problem in insulin or in the insulin receptor or production. Pwedeng may ibang sakit yung pasyente, and one of which could be adrenal diabetes. So let's talk about the functions of glucocorticoids or effect on protein metabolism. So look at this. There is a reduction of cellular proteins in all cells, skeletal muscles, except those of the liver. In short, enhance ang protein catabolism. Remember, as I've mentioned a while ago, cortisol will promote gluconeogenesis. And because of that, there is decreased protein synthesis. Amino acid transport into extrahepatic tissues like your skeletal muscles are markedly low. So let's talk about its effect on the muscles, skin and connective tissue, bone, and lymphoid tissue. So if you have an increased protein catabolism, what will happen to the muscle of the patients? Anong pwedeng mangyari sa muscles nila? Increase ang protein catabolism, decrease protein synthesis. What do you expect will happen to the skeletal muscle mass? Decrease, or there will become atrophic. So if you could see this picture, in patients with Cushing syndrome, the cortisol level is extremely high or elevated. There is protein catabolism, decreased protein synthesis. So in short, you will see that the peripheral muscles becomes atrophic. How about in the skin and connective tissue? If you have protein breakdown, what will be its effect on the skin and connective tissue? Do you have proteins in the skin? Meron ba tayong protein sa skin?
Yes.
What type of protein? You have what? Anak, ano ba yung kadalasan nyo? Ngayon nga, iniinom na siya.
Collagen.
Very good. You have collagen. The collagen and elastin makes the skin elastic. However, since patients with high level of cortisol, there is increased gluconeogenesis, and one of which is that the proteins, there would be increased protein breakdown. The collagen are decreased, okay? Not only collagen, even the elastin. So patients are prone to develop striae. How about the effect of protein catabolism on bone? Okay, the cortisol antagonizes the effect of active vitamin D metabolite. Can you still remember the active vitamin D metabolite? What is its relation on calcium? May mga umiinom ba dito ng calcium supplement, mga anak? What can you notice? Those calcium supplements is combined with
Vitamin D.
With vitamin D. Kung mapapansin niyo yung mga lola nyo, mami nyo, they are taking calciums, but look at the label. It's not only calcium. It is normally or commonly combined with vitamin D, because the active vitamin D metabolite is very important in the reabsorption of calcium in the gut system. For faster and better absorption of calcium in the intestine, you need an active vitamin D metabolite. So if the cortisol antagonizes the effect of active vitamin D metabolite, what will happen to the absorption of calcium in the intestine? High or low?
Low.
Low. Kasi nagkakaroon ng antagonistic effect ang cortisol sa active vitamin D. If you don't have active vitamin D, the absorption of calcium would be low. So what will happen to the blood calcium level? High or low?
Low po.
Of course, low. Low ang absorption sa intestine ng calcium. You expect also that the blood level of calcium is also low. If you have hypocalcemia, what hormone will be elevated so for you to compensate the hypocalcemia?
PTH.
We have the parathyroid hormone. And remember, the parathyroid hormone has 3 effects on this 3 organ system. Has effects, no? You have effect on the intestine, kidney, and on the bone. With regards to bone, the parathyroid hormone will promote what?
Calcium resorption.
Bone resorption, so that the calcium will be released in the blood to increase or to make the normal calcium level. Okay? So in short, patients with high cortisol level, such as seen in patients with Cushing syndrome, will have a brittle bone or they are prone to develop osteoporosis. Lastly, cortisol also has an effect on the lymphoid tissue. It causes involution of lymph nodes such as thymus and spleen. This all leads to the decreased antibody production. Okay. Coincidentally, with the reduced protein elsewhere in the body, the liver proteins become enhanced. Furthermore, the proteins or the plasma proteins are increased, especially the gluconeogenic amino acid alanine. So look at this. Remember, because of gluconeogenesis, okay, there would be protein breakdown, increasing the amino acids that will be transported to the liver, and there is increased mobilization of amino acids from the extrahepatic tissues such as your skeletal muscles, and this will cause the following effects. Increased rate of deamination of amino acids by the liver, increased protein synthesis in the liver, increased protein formation of plasma proteins by the liver, and increased conversion of amino acids of glucose. In short, all amino acids are transported to the liver, and there is increased protein breakdown in the skeletal muscles. I'm done discussing about the effects of glucocorticoids on carbohydrate and protein. So let's talk about its effect on the fat metabolism. In much the same manner that the cortisol promotes amino acid mobilization from the muscles, it also promotes mobilization of fatty acids from the adipose tissue. Look at this. Cortisol increases the free fatty acids level in the plasma. How? Can you still remember glycerophosphate? Does anyone remembers glycerophosphate in the biochemistry? Recall that the glycerophosphate is actually derived from glucose, and it is required for both the deposition and maintenance of triglycerides in different cells. And if there is an absence of glycerophosphate, the fat cells begin to release the fatty acid. Glycerophosphate kasi, kailangan siya for the deposition and maintenance of triglycerides. The cortisol inhibits glycerophosphate, which makes the triglycerides break down or unstable, releasing the free fatty acids in the plasma, making the level of which on the blood elevated. Aside from that, cortisol oxidizes the fatty acid too. Okay. High level of cortisol can cause obesity. Doc, labo nyo naman. Kanina, paulit-ulit mo pong ine-emphasize, okay, that the cortisol inhibits glycerophosphate. In short, you cannot maintain triglycerides, increasing the free fatty acids in the plasma, or there would be lipolysis. Why is it that patients with high level of cortisol will have an elevated chances or increase in chances in developing obesity? And what is pathognomonic, or what is very important in their type of obesity is that high level of cortisol can cause centripetal distribution of fats, or what we call the peculiar type of obesity. They have central obesity. Okay. There are actually two concepts on that. One, remember that I've mentioned to you that cortisol is a stress hormone, or also known as stress hormone. When you are stressed, after exam, bago lumabas ang grade, kakainis naman, ang hirap ng exam. Tara, kain tayo. Kaya lang, hindi ko na masyadong masabi yun. Common kasi yun kapag face-to-face, after nila lumabas ng room, hirap no, tara, kain tayo. Ngayon, kahit yata hindi kayo kumakain pa rin kayo sa bahay kasi online tayo. But I guess you would still feel that after the exam, you have high tendency to eat because cortisol increases or stimulate the appetite center. You tend to eat more. Kasi na-stress ka eh. To combat stressful condition, you increase the source or energy source, no? Such as glucose. So in short, cortisol stimulate the appetite center. You eat more. Kung kain ka ng kain, di mo naman na-utilize yung glucose. What will happen to the excess glucose in the blood? Anybody from the class? Nak, common yan sa atin ngayon. Kain tayo ng kain. Pero less ang physical activity. What will happen to the excess glucose? It will be stored as?
Glycogen.
Glycogen and? Sobra pa rin. Anong gagawin pa sa ibang excess glucose? It will be stored as?
As fats po.
As fats. Glycogen and fats. In short, if the level of cortisol is high, and then cortisol will stimulate your appetite center, kain ka. Kasi you need more source of ATP. Sobra naman. The excess glucose will be stored as fats. However, we have more fat receptors in the central part of our body. Mas marami kang receptors dito, mas maraming deposits of fats in the central portion. That will cause the obesity of the patient on the central part of the body, which will cause pendulous abdomen, moon fascie, and buffalo hump. So grossly, pag nakita niyo yung pasyente, there is a central distribution or peculiar type of obesity. Pendulous abdomen, buffalo hump, okay, moon fascie. But remember, cortisol increases protein catabolism. That causes skeletal muscle atrophy. So look at this. The skeletal muscles or peripheral muscles decreased in mass, kaya mas lalong nagiging prominent ang kanyang central obesity. Not only that, what's this? And also this. What have you noticed? The patient also has what?
Bruises po, Doc.
There are bruises or color discoloration, no? There are bruises. Patients with high level of cortisol are prone to develop bruises. Doc, bakit? Bakit kaya? Kaya na. Why is it that patients with high level of cortisol are prone to develop bruises? Anong meron sa blood vessels natin?
Collagen po.
Yes, we also have proteins in the blood vessels. We have collagens too. That's why kapag mataas ang cortisol, increased protein catabolism, decreased protein synthesis, decrease ang collagen din ng blood vessels. So they are prone to rupture. So pag nagkaroon lang ng konting trauma, patient would suffer with bruises. So there is easy bruisability. Okay. So almost any type of stress, whether physical, emotional, mental, or neurogenic causes, there's an immediate and marked increase in ACTH secretion. Okay, this is followed by greatly increased cortisol secretion of your adrenal cortex. So that's why cortisol is what we call the stress hormones. Cortisol promotes gluconeogenesis, protein catabolism, fats catabolism, and other than that, one other characteristic of cortisol is that it has something to do with anti-inflammatory effect. So let's discuss the effects of glucocorticoids with resistance to stress and inflammation. Look at this slide. Cortisol is important in resisting stress and inflammation. These conditions are form of stress. Trauma, infection, if the patient is exposed to extreme weather condition or extreme temperature such as hot or cold, injection of norepinephrine and other sympathomimetic drugs, patient who is ongoing, who will undergo and undergone surgery, injection of necrotizing substances beneath the skin, and restraining an animal, even nga sa animal, if they restrain the animal, no, the cortisol level of those dogs seems to be elevated too. Or almost any debilitating diseases could increase cortisol level. So what is the effect of high-level cortisol on its anti-inflammatory effects? When tissues are damaged by trauma, by infection with bacteria, or in other ways, they almost become inflamed. In some conditions, the inflammation is more damaging than the trauma or disease itself. The administration of large amounts of cortisol can usually block this inflammation or even reverse many of its effects once it has begun. Let's review the 5 main stages of inflammation. If you could still recall, on the second part of blood, inflammation was discussed to you. So these are the 5 main stages. The first stage is that there would be a release of inflammatory cytokines such as histamine, bradykinin, prostaglandin, and leukotrienes. These inflammatory cytokines will cause vasodilation. Pag dilated ang blood vessel, you expect also that the blood flow is increased. The increase in blood flow will cause the erythema or the redness of the area. Aside from that, these inflammatory cytokines could lead to the increased capillary permeability. Even proteins or yung plasma will leak out to the surrounding tissues of the damaged cells. So there would be migration of leukocytes. The clotting factors are also released in the surrounding tissues and will cause the walling off effect. There is also an ingrowth of the fibrous tissue and healing process will begin. However, steroids blocks the early stages of inflammation and this will cause the rapidity of healing. So the easiest way for you to appreciate it, simple lang. If you have an acne, remember, pagka meron kang stress, no, you are prone to develop acne. I'll discuss it to you later why. But patients with acne, if you will see here, because of the inflammatory cytokines, the blood vessels are dilated, increase yung blood flow that causes erythema or reddening on the area. There is some necrotic debris and past cells too, which are combated by the phagocytic cells. If you apply steroids on this area, usually in less than 2 days, this would subside. Okay? Because the action of cortisol stabilizes the lysosomal membrane. How? By inhibiting the first step. Glucocorticoids or steroids inhibits the phospholipase A2. Pag na-inhibit niya, it stabilizes the lysosomal membrane, inhibiting the release of proteolytic enzymes such as leukotrienes and prostaglandins. Because of the decreased release of proteolytic enzymes, you will also notice that the rest of the steps or stages will decrease. Decreased capillary permeability, decreased migration of white blood cells and phagocytic cells, decreased phagocytosis. It also suppresses the immune system. And lastly, the steroids or glucocorticoids prevents the release of interleukin-1, thus attenuating fever. So kadalasan, yung pasyenteng may naka-steroids, no, they do not develop fever because of this last step. The cortisol inhibits the release of interleukin-1. It has a good and bad effect. One of the bad effect of which is that, remember, if you are infected with some virulent virus or bacteria, one compensatory mechanism of your body is to increase the blood temperature. And this is what you call the fever. By increasing the body temperature or yung fever na tinatawag natin, it has somewhat combating also or trying to kill the viruses or bacteria. Because at high body temperature, those viruses and bacteria would die. So cortisol causes resolution of inflammation by blocking most of the factors promoting inflammation And the rate of healing is enhanced by mobilization of amino acid by increasing gluconeogenesis, increasing the fatty acids available for energy, and inactivating or removing the inflammatory products. Aside from what those I've mentioned, there are other effects of cortisol too. And what are those? Cortisol blocks inflammatory response to allergic reactions by decreasing the number of eosinophils as well as lymphocytes. Kaya nga, if you would remember, patients with severe allergic reaction or patients with asthma, chronic asthma attack, steroids are also given to those patients. This is to decrease the inflammatory response. Cortisol increases the production of red blood cell. In short, cortisol promotes erythropoiesis. Ano nga dati yung alam lang natin na hormone that promotes or stimulates erythropoiesis? You have the erythropoietin. So in short, what I want to emphasize now is that it's not only erythropoietin, but also cortisol could increase production of red blood cell. Pero syempre, predominantly, hematopoiesis or erythropoiesis is mainly stimulated by erythropoietin. Okay. So in short, cortisol or decreased level of cortisol, this could also lead to the development of anemia of those patients. Cortisol also promotes lung maturation. It stimulates type 2 pneumocytes activity, increasing the lung surfactant production. Okay? And sa aming mga obstetrician, this is very important because we really need steroids. We usually give them to the mother by injecting it intramuscularly. Okay? Yung mga pasyenteng ongoing or in preterm labor. We want to enhance the fetal lung maturity. For us to promote fetal lung maturity, we give steroids to the mother and the mother will give that through the umbilical cord na blood products to increase or enhance the maturation of the lungs of the baby. Para mag-deliver man ng mommy, at least somehow, there is an advanced fetal lung maturity to decrease the incidence of intubation of the baby or respiratory distress syndrome. What else? Cortisol, as I've mentioned a while ago, has an indirect effect on the development of osteoporosis. Again, cortisol antagonizes the activity of active vitamin D metabolite, which causes the decreased absorption of calcium in the gut. Because of that, patient would develop low blood calcium level, which will promote parathyroid hormone release or production. Parathyroid hormone causes bone resorption, and this would lead to a brittle bone or also known as osteoporosis. Lastly, both excess and deficiency of cortisol causes water retention. Now, my question is, in excess of cortisol, how does it cause water retention? Pag mataas ang cortisol, paano nga siya nagko-cause ng water retention? What's the activity of cortisol? Anybody from the class? How does cortisol or elevated level of cortisol cause water retention? Can you still remember the early part of my lecture? Remember the adrenal hormones I've shown to you in comparison to the synthetic steroids? If you would recall, cortisol has both what? Mga anak, cortisol has both glucocorticoid Exactly. Kung matatandaan niyo yung graph kanina or yung tabulation kanina, 1.0 for mineralocorticoid activity as well as glucocorticoid activity. In short, can you give me one example again of mineralocorticoid? Aldosterone. If you would recall, tapos na kayo sa renal, what's the activity of aldosterone? Ano ang kaya niyong matandaan sa renal? May binanggit malamang yun sa aldosterone. Aldosterone causes what?
Regulates sodium and water.
Sodium and water. It promotes sodium reabsorption. Kung nasa ng sodium, water will follow. So aldosterone increases sodium reabsorption, water will follow, increasing the blood volume. In short, it causes water retention. So high level of cortisol, since it doesn't only have glucocorticoid activity, it has the same effect as on mineralocorticoid activity. We expect that there would be a marked sodium reabsorption, water will follow, increasing the blood volume. In short, water retention. How about in deficiency of cortisol? Dok, labo mo talaga. Kanina ka pa. Pag mataas ang cortisol, naintindihan ko. Sabi mo kasi nga, cortisol and mineralocorticoid activity is just the same in cortisol. How about in deficiency? Bakit pag wala ka raw or konti lang ang cortisol, pwede ka pa rin mag-develop ng water retention? Are you familiar with antidiuretic hormone?
Yes, Doc.
Ano ang ginagawa ng antidiuretic hormone?
Water retention po.
Antidiuretic hormone, by the name itself, it prevents diuresis. It prevents the water excretion in the urine. It promotes water reabsorption. The cortisol inhibits or antagonizes the effect of ADH. Kapag wala kang cortisol, walang nag-i-inhibit sa activity ng antidiuretic hormone. What happens there is that the ADH activity predominates, increasing water reabsorption, increasing the blood volume. Or in short, it also causes water retention. So in short, it has an indirect effect on the water retention when the cortisol level is low. Okay. Do you have any question on glucocorticoids activity or glucocorticoids such as your cortisol? Because if none, I'll proceed with mineralocorticoids or the regulation of minerals in the blood.
So, question na po dun sa part ng how does the corticoids po help in the lung maturation of the babies?
Okay. The cortisol or corticosteroids stimulates the type 2 pneumocytes. Type 2 pneumocytes is the one responsible for the lung surfactant. Can you still, nag-pull mo na ba kayo? Nag-respi na ba kayo?
Yes, Doc.
Okay, can you, do you know the importance of the lung surfactant?
Doc, it reduces the surface tension po of the lungs.
It reduces the surface tension. It prevents the lungs to collapse. Can you still remember? Siya kasi yung nakikita, for example, these are the alveolus, no? Alveolus, alveolus. In between that, you have the lung surfactant. So that when you inspire and expire, especially when you expire, it will prevent the lungs to collapse. Hindi siya totally magko-close. Kailangan may air pa rin siya sa loob because of the lung surfactant here outside. It reduces surface tension. Can you follow? So, the cortisol or glucocorticoid stimulate the type 2 pneumocytes to produce lung surfactant to decrease the surface tension so that when the baby was delivered, the baby could inspire and expire on its own without respiratory distress, without difficulty. Can you understand? That's why glucocorticoids or steroids are given to a mother who is on preterm. Purpose nun, lahat ng binibigay mo kay mommy will be brought also to the baby so that the baby would not suffer with respiratory distress just in case the preterm labor is not addressed or not controlled. Any more question?
Ayun na po, Doc. Thank you po.
Okay, thank you. Let's proceed with mineralocorticoids. Okay, in mineralocorticoids, we have here the zona glomerulosa. The glomerulosa cells is very important in the production of aldosterone. Look at this. Just for a recap, can you see the cortisol? Ito yung minimension ko sa inyo kanina that it has both glucocorticoid and mineralocorticoid activity. Yun nga yung in-eliminate ng synthetic steroids. In synthetic steroids, okay, the prednisolone, methylprednisolone, dexamethasone, which are commonly used in the clinical setup or in the hospital settings, they eliminated the mineralocorticoid activity because they just want the glucocorticoid activity. Kaya mahal yung mga steroids na nakikita nyo sa ospital or sa pharmacy. So let's go back now to mineralocorticoid. The mineralocorticoid is best exemplified by aldosterone, which is synthesized and released by glomerulosa cell. So how does aldosterone secretion being regulated? They're actually regulated by 4, but these 2 are the most common or the most potent. So potassium ion concentration and renin-angiotensin system are far the most potent in regulating the aldosterone secretion. A small percentage increase in potassium ion concentration will cause a several increase fold in the release of aldosterone. Likewise here, if there is an elevated angiotensin 2, this will cause the release of aldosterone secretion too. The last 2, look at this. An increased sodium ion concentration will only cause a slightly decrease in aldosterone secretion. In short, it only has a little effect. ACTH is necessary for aldosterone secretion but has a little effect in controlling the rate of secretion. Let's review your renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. Can you still remember this? Common to, the term nating RAAS. So in renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, patients here suffer with decreased blood volume. If you have low blood volume, the blood pressure is also expected to be low. That's why the renal blood flow is also expected to be low. If you have decreased renal blood flow, the flow of filtrate is also decreased. That's why there are more time for solute reabsorption on the tubules, and when the filtrate reach the macula densa found at the distal convoluted tubule, the level of sodium in the filtrate is low. Macula densa will sense the low sodium filtrate or the low sodium level in the filtrate. JG cells will be stimulated to produce renin. Renin is important in the conversion of angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1. Angiotensin 1, okay, will be converted to angiotensin 2 by angiotensin converting enzyme which is found in the lungs. This angiotensin 2 is very important because it will stimulate the glomerulosa cells to increase the production or conversion of corticosterone to aldosterone. Aldosterone increase sodium reabsorption, water will follow, increasing the blood volume, correcting the case or the situation. Aldosterone per se will cause, once stable na yung patient o normal na ang blood volume, inhibit the JG cells too. Angiotensin can also have an effect on the blood vessel, but by causing vasoconstriction, increasing the total peripheral resistance, increasing the blood pressure. So high level, aside from the angiotensin 2, as I've mentioned, slightly increased potassium concentration level will stimulate the glomerulosa cells to produce and synthesize aldosterone secretion. These two has a little effect. So let's discuss the functions of aldosterone on renal and circulatory effect, as well on the effects on sweat glands, salivary glands, and intestinal epithelial cells. Let's discuss first the effects of aldosterone on the renal. Recap na lang to kasi na-discuss na rin ito sa inyo sa renal. So we have here the aldosterone in renal effect. Aldosterone increases renal tubular reabsorption of sodium and secretion of potassium. So in short, it causes sodium to be conserved in the extracellular fluid while increasing potassium excretion in the urine. Excess aldosterone increases extracellular fluid volume and arterial pressure, but has only a small effect on plasma sodium concentration. Doc, pang ilang beses mo nang magulo ha? Kanina sabi niyo po, aldosterone promotes sodium reabsorption in the tubules. So expectedly, dapat mataas yung sodium in the blood. Bakit dito sinasabi mo that it only has a small effect on plasma sodium concentration? Remember, as I've mentioned, aside from sodium reabsorption, water will follow. So it would have somehow delusional effect. Not only that, there is what we call a phenomenon, aldosterone escape. Once the sodium is reabsorbed, water will follow. We expect that the extracellular fluid volume is also elevated by 5 to 15%. If the blood volume is elevated, we expect also that the blood pressure is elevated because there would be an increase in the cardiac output. It could be as high as 15 to 25 millimeter mercury. If there is increase in blood volume, the blood going back to our heart is also increased. This would be sensed by your atrium, releasing atrial natriuretic peptide by the name itself, natriuretic. Natri, sodium, uretic, okay, excretion in the urine, promote or enhances urine production. So in short, there would be pressure natriuresis or pressure diuresis. The atrial natriuretic peptide will cause the sodium excretion in the kidneys or in the tubules that causes natriuresis. Sodium attracts water. Water will follow to the urine. So there would be diuresis. And this will cause the aldosterone escape. Those two reasons, the delusional effect and aldosterone escape, would be the possible reason why the sodium plasma concentration is only slightly elevated. So far, so good. No question. Silence means yes. Let's proceed. So the excess aldosterone causes hypokalemia and muscle weakness. Too little aldosterone causes hyperkalemia and cardiac toxicity. Mga anak, gusto ko matuto kayo sa adrenal gland kasi isa ito sa topic na madali lang at kaya nyong ipasa at mabawi yung ibang grades ninyo. So please listen carefully. An excess in aldosterone causes hypokalemia. Later on, this would cause muscle weakness. Paano yun, doktora? Remember that aldosterone causes sodium reabsorption, potassium secretion. Potassium is the main cation found intracellularly, right? Siya yung main cation inside the cell. If you have high level of aldosterone, sodium reabsorbed, potassium secretion in the urine, what will happen to the level of potassium in the blood kung tinatapon nyo siya sa ihi? High or low?
Low po.
low. So patients will suffer with hypokalemia. Remember that what we are talking about with regards to the plasma concentration is the level of potassium in the extracellular fluid. In short, if this is the extracellular, potassium is low, potassium from the intracellular cell, okay, from the cell will tends to go out because of the concentration gradient. Mababa ang potassium in the plasma, mataas ang potassium inside the cell, there would be potassium efflux because of the concentration gradient. Potassium will tends to go out. Now, what will happen to the resting membrane potential of the cell? Will it become more negative or less negative?
Less negative po.
Less negative. Since potassium is a cation and the potassium intracellularly will have an efflux because of the low potassium level outside the cell, nabawasan ka ng cation intracellularly. So the resting membrane potential will become more negative. Cell will become hyperpolarized. So if this is the resting membrane potential and this is the critical firing level, since it becomes more negative ang resting membrane potential, you need more intense stimulus for you to reach the critical firing level. In short, patient would manifest with muscle weakness. Kabaliktaran din kapag little aldosterone. It causes hyperkalemia. More potassium inside the cell, less negative cell, hypopolarized cell, easily excitable ang cell that could lead to cardiac toxicity. Next, aldosterone increases tubular hydrogen ion secretion in exchange for sodium in the intercalated cells of the cortical collecting tubules. So in short, aldosterone decreases extracellular fluid hydrogen ion concentration and may cause mild alkalosis. So the effects on the gland are the same with that of the renal tubules. The effect on the sweat glands, salivary glands is important to conserve body salt in hot environment, and the effect of saliva on the salivary gland is necessary to conserve salt when excessive quantities of saliva are lost. So aldosterone enhances the absorption of sodium in the intestinal cells, especially or specifically in the colon. This prevents sodium loss in the stool. In short, kapag wala kang aldosterone, sodium absorption can be poor. This would lead to a failure in the absorption of chloride and other anions and water as well in the intestine. So if you lack aldosterone, this would cause diarrhea with further loss of salt from the body. Okay. So stress could lead to increased production of cortisol, increased production of ACTH. So what I just want to show you on this slide is that the ACTH, melanocyte-stimulating hormone, lipotropin, and endorphin all came from pro-opiomelanocortin. The pro-opiomelanocortin is a gene that is actively transcribed in several tissues, including the corticotropes cells of the anterior pituitary gland. The pro-opiomelanocortin neuron in the hypothalamus, cells of the dermis, and lymphoid tissues express ACTH and lipotropin. If you would look at this, are you familiar with melanocyte-stimulating hormone? It is the hormone that stimulates the formation of melanin, resulting in the darkening of the skin. However, the MSH produced from pro-opiomelanocortin on this part is very minimal or very negligible. So since ACTH has an MSH sequence, it is probably the ACTH that causes the formation of melanocyte-stimulating hormone and causes the darkening of the skin. In short, when the ACTH is elevated, we could expect that MSH could also be elevated. Do you have any questions so far? Because this would be the end of the first part of my lecture. Any question?
None po, Doc.
Okay. So let's proceed to the second part. Let's have 1 minute break first. Thank you. Can we continue? Okay lang kayo para makapagpahinga kayo before Dr. Olivar?
Yes, po, Doc.
Thank you. Okay, so let's proceed to the second part of my lecture, which are the abnormalities of the adrenal gland. Let's first discuss hyperadrenalism, or also known as Cushing syndrome. Cushing syndrome is that there is a hypersecretion of cortisol. Before, the most common cause of hypercortisolism is the adenoma of anterior pituitary gland. But nowadays, because of the chronic use, left and right usage, because of the advantages of glucocorticoids or steroids, the most common cause of hypercortisolism nowadays is the prolonged exposure to steroids for therapeutic purposes. Let's go back to the first one. The first one, before, as I've mentioned, is the most common cause of hypercortisolism. This could be secondary to the adenoma of anterior pituitary gland, or also known as Cushing disease, wherein the adenocorticotropic hormone is also elevated, and this causes the hypercortisolism. Second cause of hypercortisolism could be abnormal function of the hypothalamus. There is increased corticotropin releasing factor release or synthesis. Third, ectopic secretion of ACTH by a tumor or adenoma of the adrenal cortex. So this would only be a recap because actually I've already emphasized these things on the early part of my lecture. You have here the Cushing syndrome. This is mobilization of fats from the lower part of the body with concomitant extra deposition of fat in the central areas because we have more fat receptors on the central part of our body that would lead to pendulous abdomen, Moon-Fassi, and buffalo hump. But aside from this, patients with Cushing syndrome also develop severe acne and hirsutism or excessive hair growth. Now, my question is why? Bakit yung mga pasyenteng mataas ang cortisol in their blood could manifest with acne and facial or body excessive hair growth or hirsutism? Why?
Is it because of the excessive androgen po, Doc?
Bakit sila nagkakaroon ng excessive androgen?
Due to the adrenal tumor po.
Adrenal tumor? What else? Can you still remember what layer of the adrenal cortex responsible in the synthesis and secretion of cortisol? Saan nga napuproduce? Fasciculata. In zona fasciculata, okay, actually even in zona reticularis, there is a minute amount of cortisol release, but it is mainly in zona fasciculata wherein cortisol is produced. Aside from cortisol, what is being produced by the zona fasciculata?
Like androgen po.
It can synthesize small amount of androgen. Kaya mapapansin nyo, di ba, remember I keep mentioning that cortisol is a stress hormone. Papansin nyo pag exam, pag stress ka, anong nangyayari sa'yo? Tinitigyawat na naman ako, ang busy kasi, ang toxic kasi. Pagod lagi, puyat lagi, tinitigyawat tuloy ako. Remember? During
Yes,
stressful condition, cortisol is elevated. Kapag mataas chronically ang demand mo sa iyong cortisol, even the production of androgen is also increased. Kaya kapag ka-stress ka, tinitigyawat ka na, stress na naman ako eh. Ano pa? Minsan nagkakaroon ng abnormality sa menstruation. Yung common term na naririnig nyo sa mga OB, there is hormonal imbalances. So nagkakaroon ng hyperandrogenism. Ang explanation nun is that when you are stressed, you need stress hormones such as cortisol. However, the zona fasciculata does not only produce cortisol. It can also produce a small amount of androgen. Kaya lang kung sobrang taas ng demand, androgen will also be elevated. That causes the hyperandrogenism manifestation, severe acne, oily skin, excessive hair growth, or hirsutism. Next, patients with Cushing syndrome are prone to develop hypertension. Nabanggit na nga natin kanina that glucocorticoids or the cortisol has both glucocorticoid activity and mineralocorticoid activity. It has an aldosterone effect. So sodium reabsorption, water will follow, increasing the blood volume, and this will cause or may lead to the development of hypertension. Of course, elevated blood sugar because of increased gluconeogenesis and decreased glucose uptake of the cell. So in Cushing syndrome, there is muscle atrophy, lack of collagen and elastin on the skin and connective tissue that causes the striae, bone brittleness, secondary to the indirect effect. Remember, the vitamin D active metabolites are antagonized by cortisol, and the lymphoid tissue, the immune system is too impaired, and some patients may even die of infection. So kapag hindi na correct yung kanilang Cushing syndrome or hypercortisolism, this could lead to death. So treatment, if there's adenoma or mass, do surgery. For some cases, medical treatment is advantageous, wherein you can use the following: ketoconazole, metrirapone, aminoglutetimide, which blocks steroidogenesis, or something to block the ACTH secretion, such as these two medications: serotonin antagonist, GABA transaminase inhibitors. So let's discuss now hypoadrenalism, or also known as Addison's disease. This time, both mineralocorticoid and glucocorticoid are decreased. So what causes the hypoadrenalism, or also known as Addison's disease? This could be primary or secondary. Pag sinabi nating primary, adrenal cortex is involved. Pag secondary, it is on the higher center or the anterior pituitary gland. Patient may develop hypoadrenalism secondary to atrophy of the adrenal cortex, secondary to non-functioning cells, secondary to autoimmune diseases, tuberculosis, and cancer. So in short, na-damage yung kanilang adrenal cortex cell, decreased production of mineralocorticoid as well as glucocorticoids. Or it could be secondary to anterior pituitary problem. For glucocorticoid deficiency, the following are seen on the patient. 1. Because glucose cannot be synthesized through gluconeogenesis, the normal blood glucose level cannot be maintained in between meals. This will result to sluggishness of the energy metabolism, decreased metabolic functions of the body due to inability to mobilize amino acids and fats. Because glucocorticoids are necessary to maintain other metabolic functions of the tissues in addition to energy metabolism, there would be weakness presentation of the patient. Susceptibility to stress and infection, and water intoxication. As I've mentioned, pag wala kang cortisol, walang mag-i-inhibit on the antidiuretic hormone. Antidiuretic hormone activity will predominate, increasing water reabsorption on the kidney tubules, increasing water intoxication incidence. So even a mild respiratory infection could actually lead to death. In mineralocorticoid deficiency, there is decreased extracellular fluid volume, decreasing cardiac output, decreasing the blood pressure. So if not corrected, this could lead to death. How about in the level of sodium? Pag wala tayong mineralocorticoid, if we do not have aldosterone, what will happen to the level of sodium in the blood? High or low? You do not have aldosterone. What will happen to the sodium level in the blood? High or low?
Low po.
Low, because there would be no sodium reabsorption. Sodium is low in the blood or hyponatremia. How about potassium level in the blood?
High po.
High.
High, kasi remember, your aldosterone causes sodium reabsorption, potassium secretion. How about the hydrogen level in the blood? Is it high or low?
High po.
High ba? What is the activity of aldosterone? Sodium reabsorption, potassium secretion. How about in hydrogen? Hydrogen secretion din siya. So in short, kapag wala kang aldosterone, walang magsisecrete ng hydrogen mo, the hydrogen will maintain on the blood. And this will cause metabolic acidosis. Can you follow? Tatlo lang yon, anak. Please remember. Aldosterone causes sodium reabsorption, potassium, and hydrogen secretion. As long na nare-remember niyo yon, you do not need to memorize this. You just need to understand what is happening to the body of the patient. Let's continue. Naintindihan? May question so far?
None po, Doc.
Okay, thank you. So let's proceed with the Addison's disease. They also noticed that there would be melanin pigmentation. Look at this, pigmentation on the mucous membrane and on the skin. Why? The problem in Addison's disease, there is a low cortisol and low aldosterone. How does it cause skin pigmentation? Remember the last part of my slide on the first part of my lecture? I've mentioned to you the melanocyte stimulating hormone. If the ACTH is increased, Since melanocyte-stimulating hormone is a sequence of ACTH, mataas ang ACTH, we also expect that the melanocyte-stimulating hormone is also elevated. And melanocyte-stimulating hormone causes the darkening or stimulation of melanin production, which causes the darkening of the skin. So in patients with Addison's disease, if the cortisol and aldosterone is low, mababa ang cortisol, increase ang ACTH. Trying to increase the cortisol level too. However, since ACTH or adenocorticotropic hormone is elevated, one of its sequence is melanocyte-stimulating hormone. So patient could manifest with mucous membrane and skin pigmentation. So what would be the treatment? Of course, give them aldosterone and cortisol. Daily administration, because an untreated person can die after a few days or weeks because of circulatory shock. Second to the last abnormality that I would discuss with the adrenal gland is the primary aldosteronism. Kung kanina sa Addison's disease, both cortisol and aldosterone are decreased. This time, in Conn's syndrome, only the aldosterone is elevated because there is a tumor on the zona glomerulosa. So in Conn's syndrome, since the aldosterone is elevated, what will happen to the level of potassium? Ano nga ulit ang activity ng aldosterone? Sa sodium?
The absorption.
The absorption. Potassium and hydrogen.
Secretion.
Secretion. Okay. Now, if you have high level of aldosterone, what will happen to the level in the blood of potassium? Sa blood?
Low.
Low. Hypokalemia. Pag mababa ang potassium sa blood, there would be potassium efflux. The intracellular potassium will tends to go out because of the concentration gradient, and this will cause hyperpolarized cell. It would be more difficult to reach the critical firing level. The muscle or the cell will become less sensitive and will cause muscle weakness. If not corrected, paralysis. In hyperaldosteronism, what will happen to the level of sodium? Mataas ang aldosterone. What will happen to the blood plasma sodium level?
Increase.
But it is only slightly increased because of the dilutional effect and the aldosterone escape that as I've mentioned a while ago. How about with the blood pH level? Sodium reabsorption, potassium, and hydrogen secretion. Mataas ang aldosterone, tapon ka ng tapon ng hydrogen. What will happen to the blood pH level? High or low?
Increase.
So there would be metabolic alkalosis. Gusto ko anak, wag nyo tong i-memorize. I want you to understand. Doon lang kayo magbe-base sa tatlong sinabi ko. You don't need to memorize everything. You need to understand. Sa extracellular fluid volume, slightly increased because of the aldosterone escape, wherein there would be pressure natriuresis and pressure diuresis. With regards to the blood pressure, it is elevated, remember, as high as 15 to 25 millimeter mercury. So let's proceed with the diagnosis of Conn syndrome. In Conn syndrome, there is increased aldosterone. How do we differentiate Conn syndrome from RAAS? In Conn syndrome, there is persistently elevated aldosterone in spite that there is decreased or almost undetectable renin. Sa RAAS, kung maaalala nyo kanina, renin is needed to convert angiotensinogen to 1, angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2 later on because the angiotensin 2 is needed to stimulate the glomerulosa cells to produce aldosterone. But here, even the renin is low. There is continuous production of aldosterone solely in the glomerulosa cell. In short, most likely there is a tumor in the glomerulosa. Treatment, remove the tumor, or you may give medical management, spironolactone or eplerenone to correct yung mga hypertension. Okay. Lastly, we have the congenital abnormality or 21-hydroxylase deficiency. This is the most common biochemical abnormality of the steroidogenic pathway. If you can see, the 21-hydroxylase deficiency, pag nagka-problema ka dito, block ang production ng cortisol, decrease production of aldosterone. Both of these hormones are decreased or absent. There would be accumulation of progesterone and 17-hydroxyprogesterone, and all of this would lead to the development of dihydrotestosterone. So because cortisol is decreased because of the blockage here on this step, you lack 21-hydroxylase enzyme. Low cholesterol level will increase the ACTH production. There would be hyperplasia of zona fasciculata and zona reticularis trying to increase this level. And because of the blockage of this pathway, there would be segue on the pathway to this part, increasing the adrenal androgen. So this is just the summarization of what I've mentioned. You can review this later. Okay, and if we are dealing with a female infant, there would be virilization of the female. The clitoris will look like testes. The labia majora will look like, the clitoris will look like penis. The labia majora will look like testes. There would be early acceleration of linear growth and appearance of the axillary and pubic hair. Do you have any question po? Pambawi nyo ang adrenal gland, anak ha? Any question?
Doc, may question lang po. Dun sa
Yes.
Dun sa mineralocorticoid deficiency.
In mineralocorticoid deficiency, which part of that?
Yung sa metabolic acidosis po.
Okay.
Tama po ba? May water retention pero increase yung hydrogen secretion. Ay, may hydrogen retention pero increase yung hydrogen secretion.
Naririnig nyo ko, no? Sorry, hindi ko alam kung yan. Binalik ko yung slide para makakorelate yung mga other students. What's your question again? In mineralocorticoid deficiency?
Doon sa metabolic acidosis po.
Okay.
Kasi it's due to hydrogen retention pero increase yung kanyang hydrogen secretion. Hindi ko po.
Okay. Hindi. Ganito, anak. Remember, what's the activity again of your aldosterone? Balikan ko yung slide, ha? Wait lang, anak. Mas mahirap kasi Balikan natin yung activity. Ay, nandun sa first part ko pala yun. Remember, what's the activity of your aldosterone? Tatlo lang yon, sabi ko sa inyo kanina.
Increase sodium reabsorption po.
Increase sodium reabsorption. What
Tapos,
else?
yung sa increase naman po ng secretion ng potassium tsaka hydrogen.
Potassium and hydrogen.
Hydrogen po. Ayun.
Okay. So kung halimbawa, ito pakita ko sa inyo yung slide. Ulit, balikan ko ha. Sorry ang Titas of Manila, mahirap na mag-share ng screen. Wait lang. Diba ang activity natin kanina, anak? Okay. Ang aldosterone, sodium reabsorption, potassium, and hydrogen secretion. So kapag wala kang aldosterone, hindi mo masekret yung hydrogen. Remember? Nasaan ang hydrogen? Nasa blood mo. This will cause, pag mataas ang hydrogen in the blood, this will make your blood acidic or low blood pH level. Kaya nagkakaroon ka ng metabolic acidosis. Nakuha ko?
Yes po, Doc.
Okay. Balikan natin ulit yung kaninang slide para makorelate nyo yung last slide nung kanina ko. Wait lang ha. Hirap magpindot mga anak. Wait lang. Kaya kung mapapansin nyo, di ba sa mineralocorticoid deficiency, you lack aldosterone. Wala kang sodium reabsorption, walang water na susunod. You expect that the blood volume is low. Decrease ang cardiac output. Pag decrease ang cardiac output mo, mababa rin ang blood pressure mo. Konti ang blood volume mo eh. This could lead to death. Aldosterone promotes sodium reabsorption. Wala kang ang aldosterone. You expect that the sodium level in the blood is low. Hindi mo maabsorb eh. Next, aldosterone promotes potassium secretion. Wala kang ang aldosterone. Potassium is maintained in the blood. That causes hyperkalemia. Wala ka na namang aldosterone. Sabi nga natin, aldosterone promotes tubular secretion. Tatapon niya sa ihi. Hindi niya maitapon. The hydrogen will maintain in your blood. The higher the hydrogen, the more acid is the blood pH level. Patients will develop metabolic acidosis. Any more question po?
Thank you po, Doc.
Sabi ko nga sa inyo, you don't need to memorize. Kailangan nyo lang malaman yung activity ng aldosterone para hindi kayo ma-confuse. You do not need to memorize this. Iintindihin nyo lang kung anong nangyayari kapag mataas o mababa ang aldosterone. So the thing there is you need to know what is the activity of aldosterone.
Doc, ako po, Doc, I have clarification. No?
Sige po, Doc.
For cortisol, yung effect po, Doc, ng cortisol on GI, gastrointestinal tract po, Doc.
Okay. Ng cortisol o ng aldosterone?
Cortisol po, Doc.
Okay, ano gusto mo itanong doon?
Paano po, Doc, nagde-develop yung ulcer?
Yung
Yung ulcer po, Doc.
ulcer.
Possible po ba na magkaroon ng ulcer po, Doc, due to cortisol?
Hypercortisolism?
Yes po, Doc.
Tinitignan ko kung meron siyang something to do with the secretions on the glands of the intestinal cell, but I cannot correlate as of now.
Okay po, Doc. Thank you po.
I-double check ko din yon. But more of aldosterone kasi ang nagte-take effect sa gut system or sa intestinal system. In hypercortisolism, most likely, no, i-correlate ko, ang pwede nating ma-interpret doon is that you increase also the mga hydrogen secretion in the gastric mucosa. Remember, pag stress ka, mataas ang metabolism mo. Papansin nyo, bukod
Yes,
dun sa effect ng cortisol na gluconeogenesis, okay, with regards to the intestine, somehow I can correlate. Kapag mataas kasi ang stress hormones mo rin, yung metabolism mo is also increased. And one part to metabolize is yung increase din yung iyong dapat yung intestinal absorption. Increase dapat ang hydrogen secretion mo rin. So hydrogen, hydrochloric acid production in the intestine, kapag walang laman, hindi ka naman makakain that time, may kumakain bang nakikipag-away? Halimbawa, in fight and flight conditions, those hydrochloric acid Okay, kung persistently elevated yung kanilang cortisol, hindi naman enough yung supplement nila ng pagkain, can actually cause problem in their intestinal mucosa.
I see, Doc. Thank you po.
Okay. Any more question in the group? Kaya may tinatawag na stress-induced ulcer, anak, Dr. Lim.
Yes po, Doc.
Mm-mm.
Yes po. Thank you po.
Hindi na kasi binanggit yun sa atin, pero matatakel nyo rin most likely sa pag-partner ng GIT nyo. Any more question po from the group? Wala na? Okay, thank you. At least makakapagpahinga pa kayo before